Okay, so this is not about holding the violin and the bow like it was before. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about today, but let's see who we've got so far in our room, and hopefully I can see the chat too. So I'm loading it up now. Hello, yes, I am here now. Let's see what you guys have written so far. So, I cannot see a lot of what you've written. I can only see the last couple of minutes, but I do want to let everybody know that I'm here now. I have my violin, and I'm just taking a quick look here. Learning to read music was such a nice moment. Learning to read the basic three clefs of the orchestra. Yes. Wow, you know all three of them, huh? Or rather, the most basic ones. For some reason, being able to read music is so cool. My friends always look dismayed, feeling pretty lost. They don't know what I'm reading. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? I'm using my webcam's mic this time, as opposed to the one that I used last time. Okay, great. So, let's see. I have two thoughts for what I'd like to share today, but now I have three because of what I just saw in comments. So, let me tell you what my two were, and then I'll tell you that the third one, what the third one is. So the first two thoughts that I have for today's lesson. The first one is sound point, especially for you violinists or string players, how to keep your sounding point on the kind of a straight path so that you can have a very clear sound all the way down the bow. That was my first thought. The second thought I had was facial expressions / etiquette. So how it is that you as a performer or an audience member should look, like your face and your body. So you tell me, you guys are the participants, you tell me what it is, which one of those you'd be most interested in talking about. Would you be more interested in talking about etiquette, or would you be more interested in talking about sounding point? Okay, so I've got sound point, sound point, sound point. Okay, etiquette, etiquette. Well, let's see. That's about maybe 4 votes for etiquette and 2 for sounding point. Okay, so maybe what we'll do is, why don't we start with the sounding point, and then as we kind of get through it, I don't know this can take the whole time, then we'll switch to etiquette. How's that sound? Sounding point and then etiquette. I think that sounds really good. So let's talk about sound point. So you guys tell me first, why is keeping your bow in the same sounding point, why is that important? What would you say? So you can say things like, here's what happens if you don't have a good sounding point, or you can say, here's what happens if you have a good sounding point. You tell me. So, okay, so for good, even tone, it's true. Keeping the consistency in tone keeps the tone even, constant, strong, consistent sound. That is true. Now, let me tell you a myth. The myth is that when you play the violin, you have to move your bow exactly the same speed all the way up and down. Now, this is a myth that a lot of people actually start with legitimately. So let me demonstrate, for example. Okay. So here's what the myth is, and this, when you play Suzuki, for example, like I started on Twinkles in Suzuki. So when I started off, I did this. Okay. Now, my bow was moving exactly the same speed, up and down the entire time. Okay. You guys are probably familiar with that, but yes, you guys are definitely more clever than me. What happens if you don't keep your sound even the entire time? What happens? What would you say? What's your explanation for that? Someone says, how come you don't move your bow at the exact same speed? Kind of makes sense. You want that even tone, right? Okay. Screeches, crackles. That's true. Okay, let me play it a different way. I don't know if you guys can, off my webcam, I don't know if it has the sensitivity that it needs to hear low and high, so it might be equalizing, but if I were to play it like this, what would you say the difference is in sound between those two? Again, I don't know whether you can hear the difference or not using my mic. Okay, crescendo, decrescendo, dynamics. So could you actually hear that on the mic? I'm going to make sure that you can or not. Did you hear that I was playing it kind of swelling to the middle and down? Okay. I had a teacher once tell me that the I'm trying to put it in my own words of what I understood him to say, but he said basically this, that the hallmark of a good musician is one who does not keep his bow consistently moving the same speed. That the essence of music The essence of musicality is the amount of speed that you put in and the variation in speed. Because that's, like, just like how I'm speaking right now, if I talk like this the whole time and just keep this thing completely monotone and the same exact amount of emphasis on every single word, it just gets boring, right? So that when I speak and when you guys speak, well, first of all, I talk with my hand a lot, so I'll put my hand away. But when you do speak, usually your pitch goes up, right? So when you're getting to a point that's very important, for example, then you kind of have that high and low points. But also, you tend to vary the amount of volume that you put in, okay? So let's go back to sounding point. First of all, any questions you guys want to start with on sounding point? You tell me what it is that you're having trouble with on sounding point, or what you'd like to know more about. And let's start with those. Okay, there are 5 sounding points. Wow, can you list those out? Nobody's driving? Because I'm not familiar with that there are 5, but that's an interesting thought. I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just interested in what you got there. What are the various sounding points? Okay, so there are a few different ways that I know of to vary your sounding points. And while we're doing this, let's see if nobody's driving. If you have that handy, if you could just look it up and just tell me what Simon Fisher, we can peg it on him, what he says about the sounding point, because I'm interested, very interested. So let me show you what I've got. So one of the first things you can do to vary your sounding point is obvious, kind of obvious, is that the direction of your bow matters, right? So if I play like this, you see what happens to my bow. It immediately, if I have it bent this way, then it immediately goes which direction if I'm going down. It goes towards the bridge, okay? And then if you, thank you, I appreciate that comment about talking with your hands, because I always do that. Okay, the other way is if you turn it this way and you play down bow, you see how the bow just immediately goes off? Okay? And then if I do up bow this way, it goes the opposite direction if I go up bow this way. Okay? So, just fundamentally, we have to keep a straight bow, because if you don't, it's either going to go over to the fingerboard or it's going to go over to the bridge. Okay? So that's pretty standard. So here's the second way that you can vary your sounding point, is actually by tilting your bow this way or this way. Okay? So if you do it this way, now for this demonstration, for the purposes of this one, I'm going to keep my bow straight on like this, up and down, but I'm going to vary the angle that I'm playing on. Okay? Okay? So that's with it tilted. Now if I do it straight on, I can get a much stronger sound, and if I bend it this way, I will tell you that I do not recommend that way, okay? And let me tell you why. So let me show you again. So this one's okay. It makes it sound a little bit softer. If you do it straight on, you get a nice strong sound. And then if you do it this way, I do not recommend that. So you tell me, based on this demonstration, why do you think it is that I do not recommend playing it this way? That you should not tip it this way? What happens? What's the problem? Because you want to discourage people from doing it this way, but why? You have to be able to explain why, otherwise a lot of people, especially adults, aren't going to stop doing it. The arm is dragging the bow off the string. Okay, that's interesting. Can I pronounce it fetus? That sounds like fetus. I don't want to say fetus. Light fides? Is that what your screen name sounds like? I guess so. Light fides. I'm going to call you light fides. It strains the wrist. Yes, if you look at my wrist, watch what happens to my wrist when I turn this way. Now it's starting to lock my wrist. So there's a lot of stuff I can't do now because it's over like this. And so that action is kind of what happens here. Yes, thank you, Emily Ricks. You are directing the sound away from the F holes. Oh, that's really good. Actually, I think you got that from the group minds. Does that sound familiar? So I think I got that same lesson from the group minds about the F holes. But yeah, so you definitely don't want to tip it this way. You want to tip it either go straight on or tilt it this way. Okay? And I often, as I'm dragging my bow, I often will turn it during the same stroke. Okay? So I'm tilting it, I'm turning it, and my bow tends to kind of go this way as I'm doing a down bow. It starts to tilt towards the fingerboard from the top. And so the reason why I do that is because oftentimes when you're doing a down bow, you want to taper the sound off. You want to have that sound just gradually decrescendo, nicely. And so a combination of having your sounding point turn this way, as well as your bow turning this way, allows the sound, without you having to mechanically move your fingers and mechanically move your wrist, it allows you to just taper the sound off naturally. Okay? So hopefully this demonstration will give you a little bit better idea of why sounding point is so important, because we have to deal with it all the time. Anytime you're playing the violin, you have to deal with it. Okay? What other questions, you guys, or problems or concerns have you had about sounding point? How do you keep your bow straight? I think that's an excellent one. Why don't we go ahead and jump to that one? So keeping your bow straight. Okay, let me demonstrate once. I'm going to try to keep my bow exactly straight. So here, watch this, right? I'm going to keep my bow exactly straight. I'm watching the webcam. Maybe that's a bad idea. Let me try this one. Okay, was that pretty straight? Could you guys tell? I'll do it again. Pretty straight, right? So, if I were to just try, okay, for example, to just try to pull my bow down, you know, without looking at my sounding point, this is what would happen. Okay, so I'm just watching my bow this time. Okay, what happened? Could you tell? I don't know, maybe I did do it straight, but I was trying not to. I was trying just to watch my hand. Okay, let's see. I think I'm doing it right. Yeah, it slid a little bit. Okay, good. So I'm trying to screw it up without trying to screw it up. You know what I mean? With your bow, there's kind of this rounding action that you have to do, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how to describe this. But basically, when you pull your bow, when you want your bow to be straight, you have to pull it down in a non-straight way. Okay, let me reiterate that. When you try to pull your bow down straight across the string, you have to pull it in sort of a non-straight way in order for the bow to stay straight. Because obviously, if you look at this, hopefully this will make it obvious. When you pull your bow down, your arm moves, right? So your arm's going to move no matter what. It's going to have to, because your arm's not like, it's stuck at this point, right? So you don't want to pull your arm off to play the violin. You want to be able to accommodate the arm. And when you pull the bow down, your arm's going to move in such a way that your bow will just naturally go out. It won't be straight. So you have to basically compensate for that by moving your arm this way or that way so that it stays straight down the bow. Okay, let me look at see what you guys are writing so I'm not speaking out of turn here. My bow tends to slide toward the fingerboard. I don't know how to fix it. Okay, so we talked earlier about if you angle it this way and play down, it goes to the fingerboard. Likewise, if you angle it this way and go up, it goes to the fingerboard. So if you're constantly going towards the fingerboard, think about the angle you're going at. And instead of letting it tilt this way, move it purposely back towards a more straight down the middle type of thing. So you got to look. Use a mirror, like what I have right here. You could even use a webcam and look at yourself at justin.tv without recording it. Just look at yourself and see what it is that you're doing. And I can almost guarantee that you're either doing this on a down bow or you're doing this on an up bow. Okay? When people have a wonky bow, it usually becomes that they lock the wrist and move only from the elbow. Yes. Very good. Excellent point. I really appreciate that you've put that. That the wrist does matter a ton. Thank you for pointing that out. I actually had forgotten about that. Usually when I play, in general, my wrist is completely relaxed. I try not to do much at all with it. So when we talked last time about gravity, you know, gravity going in, the gravity is sitting there, but my wrist can still move. It can still bounce around however it wants. It's just that I'm letting everything rest. So when I'm pulling my bow across the string, my wrist is so relaxed that I can just allow my arm to drag back and forth, and my wrist just follows along. Just follows along, okay? So if your wrist is locked like this, then you have to manipulate it, and even if you can manage to get a straight bow out of it, you're going to wear yourself out so fast. I can tell you. Somebody from BYU that I knew, one of my good friends, practiced once for like, I don't know why she did this, but she practiced for like 4 hours, and she was kind of practicing like this, trying to do a really hard, I think it was like retaking her bow over and over again, and she had her wrist locked the whole time because she was working so hard that she actually had to take a semester off because she hurt herself. She gave herself carpal tunnel. I think it was carpal tunnel. But whatever results from locking your wrist like that, it took her out for a whole semester. And she was the concert mistress of the orchestra at that time. So it's kind of a bummer. But yeah, so don't do that. Don't lock your wrist. Let's see, should you focus on the tip of the frog or the bow on upstrokes? Excellent question. Yes, I like that observation as well, that one of you does not need this lesson. Well, maybe you don't, but I appreciate you being here, even if you know more than I do. I'm totally okay with that, comfortable with that. You tell me, and I'm happy to explain things. And if I'm wrong, point it out, because maybe I've been doing it wrong and I need to get better, okay? But yes, you're correct. It is always good to strengthen basics, okay? So let's go back to Thunder Nexus's question. Should you focus on the tip or the frog of the bow on upstrokes? Okay. Well, unfortunately, that is a two-part answer. The first is it depends. I guess it depends on where you are in your bow. So if you're at the tip, then do you remember last time? Maybe you weren't here for last time. We did the Russian grip, where your first index finger, the second knuckle is where it lays over the top, and that gives you more without straining your wrist. That gives you more power at the tip, right? So I'm just anchoring my arm into my bow down here so I can get more sound, right? Without wearing out my wrist. Now, when I'm doing an up bow, from this point up to the middle, I do focus on the tip, definitely, because I need to see where it is that tip is going, okay? And the tip, kind of like if you're going to shoot an arrow, which I really have never done, but I know that I kind of know what the theory is that when you shoot a bow, you have to be very careful where the tip is pointing, because oftentimes that's where the follow-through goes. You kind of need to get that lined up with your target so that it goes off. And the same thing is true with an up bow. Kind of feel like you're shooting off your bow. Don't actually do this. Don't actually throw it. But you want it to feel like it's going off in the right direction. You want it to, and then at the frog, once you get up to the frog on an up bow, then I usually switch very gradually into that other hand position, the Franco-Belgian, I guess is what we would call it, where my fingers move back and allow so that the frog does not have so much pressure going on in the bottom. That you can still get a nice clean sound at the frog, everything being flexible. Okay, let's see if you guys are commenting on that particular demonstration. Okay, good. I'm glad that you are understanding that. Do you have any tips for playing near the frog? Absolutely. Okay. Tip number one for me would be don't put too much weight on the frog, because as soon as you start thinking that you need to, everything gets scratchy. It doesn't matter how much or how little you're trying to push down. Just don't do it. The better thing to do is just to let the bow, the natural weight of your bow, and by the way, every bow is differently weighted, so it has a different bouncing point. But let the amount of weight at the bottom of your bow do the work for you. Because realistically, if I didn't put any weight on it, here's about how it would sound. Okay, it's not much, but if I just allow my arm to be relaxed, let my wrist be relaxed, and just let the weight go down a little bit more into it, and then just pull sideways, get a pretty good sound, right? And as long as I'm keeping my bow straight across my strings, you can get a pretty decent sound down there. Yeah? And once again, I am using my non really cool violin. I'm using just the one that I got from Innova Sound. So this is like a $1,200 violin. So even if you guys only have a $2 violin, it doesn't really matter as long as you have. I mean, if you have good technique, obviously the violin at some point is going to be the hindrance. But as far as practicing and as far as getting these techniques down, you can certainly do it on any violin that you've got. So hopefully that doesn't deter any of you from actually getting a violin who do not already have a violin. And if you have a violin that's not great, still practice on it. Still do the drills, because once you get to the point where you can get a nice violin, it all comes with you. So, okay. Oh yes. I kind of know now, because that's the latest instruments that I have, I paid for by myself. The rest of them, my parents paid for, and I didn't really appreciate it. But once you start paying for it out of your own pocket, you really start to appreciate what it is that you've got. Okay. Yes, it is very expensive. Yours was given to you, and it was a fine antique. Yes, hang on to that one. Don't allow it to slip out of your fingers, because that is very rare to actually inherit a good violin. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to sounding points. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we go to etiquette? Because I kind of feel like we should switch, because we only have 10 minutes left. This last 20 minutes for me personally is just blown by, and that's, I guess, maybe a good thing. But let's talk about. Oh, I should point out, Emily the reason why I mentioned the groupon thing is because every so often, one of you who comes and watches is a friend of mine from before. So Emily and I went to college together at BYU. We studied under the Groupmans, Igor and Vesna Groupman. So there are a lot of things that we learned at the same time that have stuck with both of us apparently. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, let's see. What kind of violin is my nice one? Yeah, so that one is a Galliano. It's a Niccolo Galliano, 1761. I got it about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We went to New York City and got it at a rare violin shop. So that's my nice one. Yeah, it's it's pretty nice. I guard it with my life. I never leave it in the car by itself. There's a lot of things that I do that you know, the insurance alone on that thing is enough to buy a new bow every year. So it's not a cheap thing, but it is also very, very easy to play on. So it allows me to take these techniques that I fine-tune, and especially if I'm using this violin, I just fine-tune them. When I get to the Galliano, I can just let loose, and the Galliano takes over and does a lot of the work for me. So that's a nice thing. And you guys can look forward to, as you progress through your violins, that a lot of the work that you're working really hard on these violins to do kind of goes away when you get later. Just I caution you, and this is something that I was cautioned when I got my new violin, do not let go of the basics. Even if your violin can do them and your bow can do them, don't let them go, because you cannot let your violin and your bow be a crutch for you. You still have to be able to do it on any violin. So I thought about that and I thought, okay, yeah, I better make sure I keep practicing those. So yeah, okay, let's see. Tips on exercise to practice sautier strokes. I think we're gonna have to do another lesson on that one. Let's switch to etiquette, but thank you for pointing the sautier thing. I'll start thinking about that, because that is a difficult technique. Okay, we have lots of opportunities to do a lot of these techniques, and I look forward to doing them. But let's go to etiquette. Okay, this is one of my favorite things to teach because I don't think I'm perfect at it, but I think I am maybe more conscientious about making faces while I'm playing than other people. And I'm going to start off with a funny example from one of my friends, also from BYU. I will not mention her name. It is a she, but it's not nobody that you guys know. I don't think even Emily knows her. Maybe she does. Okay, so Emily, if you know who this is, don't say who it is. So I was in a master class, and she would do this. I told her afterwards, I was like, you know, you probably shouldn't do that. She goes, I know, I wish I could stop doing this. But here's something that happens, okay? So let's say I'm playing something like, I don't know, I gotta think of something where I'm gonna screw up. That's pretty easy. How about, one of my favorite pieces is the Bach Partita in E major. So let's just say that I'm playing this in front of, so you guys are the audience in the master class. You're all violinists. I'm up on stage. I gotta play this, okay? So you tell me what I'm doing wrong. Try not to be too nitpicky, but there's something in particular that I'm going to do that's wrong, okay? You guys ready? Ah! Oh, man. Okay, so what am I doing? It's pretty obvious, but this is something that some people really suffer from. They at different levels, they really suffer from, okay? So you admit your mistakes. Wow, I'm now a violinist in master class. You're an amazing teacher. Thank you. Wrong. Never let the audience know when you screw up. That is excellent. That is excellent advice. Nobody's driving. I think maybe at some point we should have you teach one of these, because I think you have a lot of good insights. I won't make you, but it's just a suggestion. Okay, stop playing when you make a mistake. Yep, that's pretty obvious. Okay, now, to make it less obvious, I'm going to dial it down a little bit, okay? Okay, so what was I doing there? Less obvious, but what was I doing? Okay, so in my eyebrows, yes, in my facial expressions, okay? So I hope these two examples are pretty obvious, because I'm going to make it less obvious now, even less obvious, and dialing it back again, okay? But now you tell me what I'm doing wrong, okay? Okay, what happens? What was I doing wrong? What's the big deal? Okay? Yes, you need to look confident that you speed up on your mistakes. Okay, those are two very good observations. Anything else you guys can tell? Say speeding up, very good. You can tell just a tiny little bit of speeding up. You must exude positivity. Woohoo! Whoa, nice. Going back to fix it, I was at my little brother's piano recital, and that actually happened a lot. I was really surprised. It's not really a critique on the players themselves because they're young. I mean, these were like 12-year-olds, 13, 14. But almost every single one of them made a mistake and went back and fixed it. Like they just couldn't move on. So when they made a mistake, they stopped. They kind of stopped for a second, went back, and then found their place and went through. Now, this is a good tip for people that are learning a piece. But when you go to the point where you want to perform it in a way that is like an audience, like an official audience, not just your parents, but it's like, you know, people come to pay to come and watch you play, and you make a mistake, you don't want to go back and fix it because A, you don't want to admit that you made a mistake. B, it really is kind of jarring to an audience to have a performer up there. Okay, so as an audience with etiquette, imagine that you are watching and you're really excited for this performer, and they start making mistakes. What happens to you? This is what happens to me. Okay, so I'm listening, and this is, you know, really nice. And I start going, uh-oh, can this performer actually finish this piece? And I actually start sweating. It's almost as though I'm on the stage, standing there next to them, and they can see me, and they're like, how are you letting this kid make these mistakes and go back and fix them? I'm like, I don't know. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. But I feel nervous for them. I feel very, very nervous. Okay? So you can very much influence the how the audience is feeling the music in a good way and in a very bad way. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. You need a Maxime Vengerov smile. Yes. In that, there are some, sorry, one second. There are some performers who just are, like, they just have that personality. Okay, so we're not talking about them. Some of them have their own thing, and we may or may not like it, but it is their established persona, and that's fine. Okay, it's true. Plus, if you are a Maxime Vengerov or, you know, a Gil Shaham or a Hilary Hahn, you can afford to make whatever faces you want. As long as it's you actually feeling the music, you can get away with whatever. Okay, so I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they can't do that. I also was attending a concert where this one guy was playing the flute, and I swear he was doing this. Okay, so this is, pretend that you're right there in the camera, right? So if I ever look at you, I'm looking directly at you. Okay, so he's playing like this, and he would go like this. He'd go. Okay, what's the problem with that? He's trying to connect with the audience, but what's the problem with that? What happens? I know, it is funny, and I seriously, like, I had to go like this because I thought it was hilarious. I was just a kid back then, but I could still already tell there's something wrong with it. But what's wrong with that? He's connecting, right? I mean, okay, creepy. Comes off a little creepy, yeah? So, so you mean this expression here is not heartwarming? It doesn't make you feel like you're part of the music? Okay? Too much connection. And I will use a very specific word. I'm going to call it superficial. I'm going to say that the reason why I think he did it may be wrong, but my perception as an audience member of what he was doing was that he was showing off. He was like, okay, now you feel this. And as an audience member, I don't want to be told what I'm supposed to be feeling. I don't want to be told. I want it to be shared to me. Okay? So that if you have 100 people in an audience, all 100 people could be feeling something different. And as a performer, you're just trying to get them so that they can feel something personal. But you're not trying to make all 100 people feel the same way. Let me repeat that. You do not make an audience feel exactly the same way. That is not your point as a performer. Your point as a performer is to create an environment where they can feel a personal connection of their own to your music. Okay? So if you've ever had that discussion, or if you've never had that discussion, please have that discussion with your teacher, anybody else, and ask them to help you to connect with your audience in a way that allows them to personally have a connection. Okay? Okay, so enough of that. So let's go back to etiquette. Let's talk more about less obvious things, because clearly you guys are smart enough to see the obvious ones. But let's talk about, like, let's say I'm playing something really sad. Name me a classical piece that I might know that is very sad. And if you don't name one right now, I'll think of one. I'm sure I can think of one. So tell me what I was doing there. What was happening? I did make a mistake. Maybe you guys could or couldn't tell, but what was I doing? What was I trying to do? Okay? A little too hesitant?